Right. Very good. Hi, everyone. Chris Natsky here, along with my good buddy, JB Braden, and welcome to the 5 Biggest Mistakes Speakers Make from Stage webinar. We're so excited to be able to share this message with you tonight. We really want to thank you for making time. Most of you probably already had a full day of work when you're joining this webinar, and we really appreciate you being here. So I'm going to share my screen here so we have some slides to share with you and get into our presentation. I want to make sure. Can everyone see those slides? Just give me a thumbs up if you see it. Right on. Okay, very good, very good. So let's get started here. So, JB and I have had the opportunity to work together quite a bit over the last several years. We've shared several stages together as keynote speakers. We've also both of us have coaching practices, and within the course of that, we've had the opportunity to mentor and coach several people throughout the years in terms of speaking themselves. And as he and I started talking about maybe working on something to collaborate on, we decided that this is what we wanted to do, is kind of share with you some of the learnings that we've gotten over the last several years in speaking. And we thought the best way to do that was to talk about the 5 biggest mistakes that speakers make from stage. And so we say that with full humility, because every one of the 5 mistakes we're going to share with you, we've made.
Absolutely.
But I think we've overcome them as well. And so we're going to share with you some strategies on how to overcome those, be able to see them coming down the road, and being able to make yourself a better speaker or an entrepreneur that uses speaking as a way of building their business. Let me go on to the next slide here and kind of tell you about what the purpose is for tonight. Number one, as I said, we're going to help you identify those 5 biggest mistakes that we've identified that speakers have made, that we've made ourselves, and then strategies and tools to be able to overcome those. Not only being able to deal with them when they happen when you're on stage, but also, more importantly, how you can plan for them in advance so that you can actually just totally avoid them altogether, avoid making them. And then finally, at the end, we're going to talk about some next steps for how you can take all that learning and take it one step further, become a real world-class presenter, to either continue to develop your own speaking business or to take the entrepreneurial business that you're in and take that to a whole other level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over to my buddy JB and have him tell you all a little bit about himself.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. I'm JB Brayton with Beyond the Field Coaching, and my superpower is helping people like you elevate your business, 10x your business with speaking, by up-leveling your speaking skills and all the tools you need to do that. And that's simple.
Excellent. Right on. Right on. Well, that's to the point. That's unusual for a speaker. We tend to takes us 5 minutes to clear our throat. So well done, brother. Well done. All right. So the little bit about me. So my name is Chris Natsky. My business is called Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching. Many of you on the call know me. I'm an 8th degree black belt and former national taekwondo champion. And the way I got into speaking, I guess I started it when I was working in the corporate world. I was doing sales training. But even before that, I was teaching martial arts, even as a teenager. And that was basically being on stage, if you will. But where it really started to grow for me is when I left the corporate world back in 1995, and I opened up my own martial arts studio. And I had 6 competitors in a 2-mile radius of me. So I had to be able to distinguish myself, versus the competition. And I knew my marketing wasn't doing it. So I just went out and I started to speak. I spoke at grade schools, middle schools, high schools, service clubs, et cetera. Anyone who could fog a mirror, I'd speak. And eventually, within a 5-year span, I grew it into the largest martial arts school in Colorado. And then from that, I started getting invitations to actually speak at other events, and it turned into a professional speaking career. So that's how I come to you to share some of the things that I've learned throughout the years in the speaking world. So what are those things in speaking where we make these big mistakes? What are the 5 biggest mistakes that speakers make from stage? So JB, I'm going to turn it over to you, buddy, for the first one. Why don't you tell me a little about number 1?
Absolutely. One of the first mistakes that people make is they don't communicate the purpose of their presentation. This is a common mistake that most speakers make, but they're not aware of it. Because the key thing is to become aware of this beforehand. We always ask the question in our workshops and one-on-one coaching, what's the purpose of your presentation? So being clear on the purpose of your presentation beforehand will eliminate you making this mistake when you get on stage. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, if your goal is to inspire the audience, but yet you've crafted the presentation to only educate the audience, you're not communicating your purpose. Okay, what if your goal is to convert the audience from prospects to clients, but yet you've crafted the presentation to inspire and educate only? Now, I've made this mistake. When I first started speaking, not speaking, but coaching, I wanted to use speaking as a marketing tool to grow my business. And I would get out and I would speak and I was, hey, quite frankly, I was inspiring the hell out of people, but I wasn't converting. And it wasn't until I went back to my speaker coach and he helped me tweak my presentation and craft it in the right way to where I can not only inspire, educate, engage, and entertain, but now I'm also converting. So I went from converting less than 5% to over 30%. So what's the purpose of your presentation and understanding that? And Chris, what else would you say about the importance of that?
Oh man, I've so been there as well. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I came off stage and I was like, so pumped up about what I had shared and had connected with an audience. And then it was crickets over at the back by my book table, right? People weren't buying my book or people weren't coming in to talk about my offers. And then I started to do the same thing. I started to be able to relate stories and embed certain things about my additional businesses. And it started to just start working. It was like almost like magic. And it wasn't a hard sale. It was just very subtle. And I think the mistake that many speakers make, and I know I made it, is either you have the right message, but it's the wrong audience, right? Yeah. Or you have the wrong presentation with the right audience, or generally what it is, you got the wrong audience and the wrong presentation. So what we want to be able to do is be able to identify who we want to speak to, as well as the presentation that's going to most touch their needs, right? Hit that responsive chord, if you will. And oftentimes it's the same material that we use, but tweaking it and modifying it so it's meeting the needs of the people that you're speaking to.
Absolutely. So important.
Yeah.
So important to be able to identify that beforehand so you're not making that communication problem when you hit the stage. And the other thing that leads to this is being clear on the problem that you solve for your audience. So once you get clear on that message and the audience, you want to also make sure that you're speaking the problem that you solve for that audience effectively. And when you do that, now you're communicating your purpose. And for some people, that leads to this problem, they don't have a call to action, right? And if you don't have a call to action, but yet you want them to do something after the presentation, then the purpose that you have set forth is no longer there. So those are some key things that we want to make sure that you can incorporate into your presentation to avoid that number one mistake that a lot of people make, and that's not being able to communicate the purpose of the presentation to their audience. All right, and so let's move to number 2, Chris, and that's they try to become someone they're not.
Oh my gosh, this one so resonates with me. When I first started speaking, I had a coach that I worked with who's, he's been speaking now for probably going on 25, 30 years and is amazing presenter in front of the room. And I was actually doing a boot camp basically with him. And during that time, what we were doing is each one of the members were up there and we were presenting. So I had this thought in my mind after watching some speakers that I admired that I need to be very calm, cool, collected, smooth, and very even keel, because some of the speakers that I liked were that way. And I'd go up and I'd present and my coach would say, stop, do it again, get off stage, come back on. And he kept asking me to be more animated, more engaging, right? And it was really taking me out of my comfort zone from a speaking standpoint. But what I found out is finally I listened to him and I did it. And I realized that what he was asking me to do is basically speak in the same way that I taught martial arts, with enthusiasm, with connection, with engagement, etc. And it was more natural for me. It's really who I was all along, but I thought I needed to be someone different. And one of the things I've realized on stage is when you're up there is it's probably one of the most, Oh, you're exposed when you're on stage, right? If you're trying to hide something, you probably are not going to be able to do it. You need to be authentic on stage. You need to be who you are. And if you're not, an audience may not be able to put a finger on what it is missing, but they'll know something's off. And we've all seen speakers that maybe don't speak well so much, or they, their dialect isn't great, or they don't use great grammar, but they know how to connect with people because they're being themselves. And when I learned that, it totally transformed my speaking career. What do you think about that, JB?
Hey, it's a key point. And you and I, one of the audiences that you and I have both spoken in front of a lot, that you have to be yourself and be authentic, is teenagers.
Amen, brother.
They know when you're faking it, okay? And so that's very important. So the key to that is to make sure that you're not afraid to let your personality come through in your presentation and on stage. That's the key thing.
Oh my God. You said teenager, I started to get a little PTSD. I've had great talks in front of teenagers and I've been like, oh my God, I just blew the heck out of that one. And generally, again, it was because I wasn't connected with who I really was. So
exactly.
Awesome.
That's where you learn some of the key, how to overcome some of the key mistakes that we've made. Is in that with that particular audience. You want to move to the third one?
Absolutely. Let's go to number 3.
Okay. The number 3 is they fail to properly prepare. Once you've got your signature presentation crafted the right way, and now you have your ideal target audience and you're clear on how to communicate the problem you solve, it's time to practice, practice, practice. Malcolm Gladwell talks in his book, Outliers, he says it takes 10,000 hours to master anything. You want to master your presentation? You got to start practicing. And you practice before you hit the stage. And one of the key things about practicing, Chris, and you know this, is to understand your learning style, right? For some people, they like to memorize word for word. That's something I did, but I have a background in acting, right? So I could memorize word for word. And then once I memorize word for word, I don't say it word for word, but I know what I want to say. Right. And so memorize, for some people, is memorize the point, the overall point they want to give. Whatever your learning style is, here's the key. Know exactly what you want to say, when you want to say it, and how you want to say it. And that takes practice. Okay. And then you want to practice your pauses, your transitions, your jokes, your ad libs, your stage movement, to make sure that you're moving with a purpose and you're not just pacing back and forth. Because one of the key things I learned, Chris, when I first started, and I've seen some people do this, and I've done it before I realized it, your movement is very important.
Oh,
because here's, for instance, when you make a call to action, if you're moving backwards when you're making that call to action, it kind of takes away from the power of what you're asking the audience to do, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And they often say that 80% of the way we communicate is nonverbal. So it's not just what we're saying, it's our body language, it's the way we're moving, it's eye contact, it's smiling, it's our tonality, all those different things. And I think it's also important to understand the best way that we find for ourselves to prepare. And I think it's okay to experiment. Like for me, I'm very visual. So when I'm going to be giving a long keynote, I'll literally print up all of the PowerPoint slides and I'll write little bullet points underneath where I'll have like 9 on a sheet. And I'll just visualize off of those. So I don't do a lot of verbal preparation because I'm very visual in terms of how I learn. And I'll also not only think about and visualize the things I want to do, I'll visualize how the audience is responding. So they're leaning in when I'm telling a story. They're laughing when I tell a joke. I'm rehearsing that in my mind as well. So by the time I get on stage, I've already done it. I've already been there. And one of the ways that, man, this really worked for me, JB, is one of the first times, this is probably about 18 years ago, when I first started speaking. I got one of my first gigs out of town. It was in Utah, and it was for the Lunch Lady organization of Utah. Okay, so those ladies that serve, they call themselves the nutrition experts, but they were the lunch ladies, a lot of hairnets and aprons and whatever. But anyway, so beforehand, I was talking with the event coordinator and I said, hey, I have a slideshow that I'm going to bring, and I'll bring my computer. And she said, that's great, Chris. Jim is like the best AV guy ever. We love Jim. He's awesome. So I go there to give the talk, and I get there with plenty of time. And it's a talk that's going to be done over lunch. So it has to start immediately at noon. So anyway, I get there with plenty of time, maybe 30 minutes, Jim's working on it, and he can't get the slides to work, right? So now I'm sweating. It's 10 minutes before, it's 5 minutes before. Well, it's now noon straight up, and I got to go because I only have an hour with him. Well, I already knew my presentation, so I just went without the slides. So I'm doing my gig and things are going well. And about halfway through the presentation, I make a point that I've made several times before that's never got an audience reaction. And I make this point and everyone just starts clapping. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, I'm getting pretty good at this. And then I realized when I turned around at 30 minutes in, my slides finally came up. Jim finally got it done. But if I wouldn't have known how to do that, if I wouldn't have known my presentation without the slides, I'd have been dust. So preparation is absolutely key.
So important. And just to reiterate how important, you want to practice things like your timing. Know exactly how long it takes you to tell your opening story, how long it takes you to deliver your content piece, your call to action, and your closing story. Down to the minute, you need to know how long it takes you to do each of those things. And another thing around practice that I like to do, and I have my clients do a lot, Chris, is videotape themselves doing their presentation. Okay, so because videotape is a great learning tool, right? So they'll videotape themselves doing their presentation and send me the videotape. That's a great way to do it. But also, here's another one, a gem for you, Chris. You got a presentation coming up. It's the first time doing that presentation. Hey, why don't you invite some friends over, put out some snacks, and do your presentation for them?
That's right.
That's a great way to practice and get feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll just add one more thing. That timing is so important. You know, I've been there before where I've done it well, and then I've also not done it well. And sometimes the difference between being invited back and not is finishing on time.
Yes.
You know, because an event coordinator's got things to the minute. And if you're that guy or gal that's going over because you want to give a little more value, but you're making the event planner get off schedule, probably not a real good thing. So I always call it landing the plane on time. I'd rather be a couple minutes early than a couple minutes late.
Me too.
All right, let's get on to number 4 here. And we're going to talk about this whole idea of stories. You know, what I found in my speaking career is that one of the more powerful things about speaking is being able to deliver a powerful story to support the point that you're making. And if you look through history, you know, some of our best teachers, best speakers, best orators are all great storytellers. And, you know, there's reasons for that. It's interesting. We talk about this in our training about how the brain actually assimilates with the person telling the story along with the person hearing it. It basically moves at the same vibrational level because they can start to see themselves because they've had similar experiences. And I had an experience, this is several years ago, and it's kind of funny. It's a story about the power of storytelling. So I was joining a business mastermind group here in Denver. I was invited to join this group, and there were 3 of these groups in Denver. And the guy who invited me, who led these groups, wanted me to go to each one of the 3 groups and present something, and then also to see which group was going to be the best for me to join. So I went to 3 different groups and I prepared a business presentation for them because they were all entrepreneurs and small business owners. And I did it. And when we got to the Q&A, in 2 separate meetings, there were 2 separate people. When we got to the Q&A, those 2 separate people in 2 separate meetings raised their hand during Q&A. The first question out of their mouth was, tell us the story about the kid in the wheelchair. Now, these had been people who had seen me speak prior, and that's one of my signature stories, is about one of my martial arts students who had to spend time in a wheelchair. And that's when it hit me, buddy. I was like, oh my gosh, all this stuff, all this content, yes, was it useful for them? And are they going to be able to do something with it? Absolutely. But it was the stories that stuck with them.
I love that, Chris. And that's so important because we learn through stories. We know that. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more about the power of the story and why it's important. But you want to practice your story. You want to practice delivering your story. And when I first started out, one of my coaches taught me how, he said, here's one of the best ways that you can practice your story. Take a friend out to dinner, order some wine, sit across the table from them and tell them the story. Make sure that you're being conversational.
Yes.
Okay. And then just watch their response and their reaction as you tell the story. So that's a great way to practice your story and storytelling, and then to help you master that piece, because it's so important not to only be able to tell a story in the beginning, but where in your presentation do you put those stories? Okay. And that's so important. We'll talk about how important that is as we move into the next and very last mistake that we want to talk about tonight. They don't have a talk that captures, connects, and closes. And you want to have a talk that captures, connects, and closes. And part of that is what we were just talking about, having a story. See, people will remember how you made them feel before they remember everything that you said. And you can do that with stories. So the story part, it helps you capture and connect your audience if you've got that story crafted the right way. Okay. And you can also, with audience engagement, capture and connect with the audience. Okay. By one of the things that Chris and I have gotten very good at, and this takes a lot of skill to do. And I learned it early on in my career, because we had to bring students on stage, right? But bringing people on stage, Chris, as you well know, is a great way to capture and connect the audience and create that audience engagement.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, it's probably the thing that I get the biggest feedback on when I give keynote talks, afterwards I bring people up on stage. And for me, it was kind of a natural thing to do because I'm a teacher. So I bring people up on stage and we do some martial arts moves, et cetera, but it gets people engaged. And what it does is it gets them also connected with the person up there. In fact, sometimes, I'll tell event planners that I bring people up on stage and they'll even say, hey, who you really need to bring up is Mary. She's amazing, right? She's animated, right, whatever. And she becomes part of the show, right? She becomes part of the talk. And so now what ends up happening is I have this built-in ally up there on stage, right? And also I try to make sure that I'm recognizing them. I've also gone so far. I did one talk, this is years ago, where I did it for the National Guard here in Colorado. And I brought the general up on stage. It was a bold move. It was a bold move, but he was awesome. And all the troops, loved seeing him up in his martial art uniform, whatever, doing his thing. And so it, for me, has become one of the centerpieces of what I do when I'm speaking.
I love it. And it's a great way to keep them connected and capture the audience, as we just talked about. And that takes skill and practice. So you want to make sure that, because bringing somebody on stage, it requires a coordination. So it definitely takes skill and practice. So you want to make sure you do that. Another way to connect is to make sure you're making eye contact. Make sure you're making eye contact. One of my trainers early on in my career, his name was Bill Sanders. He told me this, and I'll never forget it. He said, JB, when you're on the stage and you're talking to an audience, whether it's an audience of 200 or 3,000, you want to have a goal to make eye contact with every single person in the audience multiple times. And when you do that, the connection that it creates to your audience is phenomenal. But the other thing that's so key that people overlook, that makes that will really create connection with the audience, is to smile and know when to smile, right? To know when to smile. That's another one of my trainers. I did a presentation. I was in a training and we were working on a presentation, and I nailed the presentation. And my trainer looked at me. He said, JB, do you realize you didn't smile one time doing that? He made me go back to my room and told me where I need to smile during that presentation. And I'll give you another example of why this is so important. Just a few weeks ago, I was at an event, and I knew the presenter, and she had a good presentation. She didn't smile. She did not smile, Chris, the entire time through that presentation. And it made her feel disconnected and cold. And she's not that type of person. She actually has a great smile. Yeah. But throughout the presentation, I don't know if she was nervous or what, but she didn't smile. Exactly. And so what happened was she missed an opportunity to connect with some people who didn't know her. So knowing when and where to smile in your presentation is a key thing to creating connection and capturing the audience as well. And then finally, close the audience, having a good close, right? And here's the thing that we always tell people: closing is not an event, it's a process. Right. And we teach people how to close throughout their presentation. Okay, so you have a clear call to action, but you're closing throughout by using what we call and what we teach in our workshop, Chris, the embedding technique.
Exactly.
Let's just say, for instance, you have a book for sale. You want people to buy your book at the end of the audience. Well, somewhere throughout your presentation, you want to embed that you have a book. Maybe you say something along the lines, and I talk a lot about that in my book, and then you keep going. You've already embedded, and now they know, they're thinking, oh, he has a book. Oh, she has a book. So that when you get to the call to action, it's not a big call to action, right?
Absolutely.
But Chris, you have a great example of how you incorporate your book into your presentation.
Well, totally. Well, and I have to give credit to one of my coaches that taught me this technique, but I already shared with you that I bring people up on stage, and it takes courage for them to come up on stage. Most of them aren't volunteering. They get voluntold that they're coming up on stage. So afterwards, what I do is I have a copy of one of my books, and I literally place it over my heart. And I say to them, Jenny, thanks so much for helping me out as a thank you for being such a great sport on stage. I want to give you a copy of my latest book, Black Belt Leadership. And I'll tell you what, afterwards, if you'd like to have me sign it, you can see me back at my autograph table. And then I hand her the book. She's happy she got the book. One thing I learned this from my coaches, and when people buy the books, do they read them sometimes? Yes, but many times they don't, because really they buy them because they want to take a piece of you home with them, right? And when I place it over my heart and making this connection, that it's like taking that part of me home with them. And when I started doing this technique, I literally, the next time I spoke, I doubled my book sales. Yeah, it was so simple to do. So, I have 2 books I give away on stage, it's done, and then people are there. So anyway, little subtle nugget there for those of you who are authors or aspiring authors. That's how you do that from stage.
I love it, Chris. And I love watching Chris do that technique. It's a great way to embed that you have a book in your presentation. So at the end, people already know you have a book, so you don't spend 5 minutes trying to convince someone to buy it. I love it, Chris.
All right. So we've talked to you about these 5 big mistakes that we've seen people make. Hopefully we've given you some nuggets of how you can utilize these things in your own speaking life, whether again, it's you want to use it to become just a better speaker overall, or you want to use this as a means of promoting your business. So of course, as we've been talking with you, we demonstrate what we teach as well. And so we obviously have a way that we think is awesome for you to be able to take this all to another level. And it's a program that we call the Champion Speakers Academy. So if you're out there and if you're a brand new speaker that has very little experience, if you're someone that's dipped their toe in it or actually has a good rhythm in terms of speaking, or even if you're a seasoned professional and you just want to up level, we really believe that this program is for you. And so what are some of the benefits and things that you receive in the Champion Speakers Academy? Well, number one, what we do is we help you really get clarity on your target market. So you're speaking to the right audiences with the right message. Number two, you're going to discover how to communicate the problem that you solve. I mean, I know that early on in my speaking career, I had some great stuff, but I really wasn't connecting it to solving a problem for someone else. But most of the most effective speakers are able to help people identify a problem and then make sure that they can communicate that they're the solution to that. So we teach you how to do that. We also help you craft a signature presentation. So at the end of this workshop, you'll literally have a 25-minute presentation crafted that you can take anywhere, whether you want to use it to, again, inspire, educate, entertain, or if you want to use it to build your own business through that, or just get additional speaking engagements, we're going to help you do that as well. Next, you're going to have some tools and techniques to transform that and take it to a whole other level. I mean, one of the things we have in martial arts is we have a concept called Kanai. It stands for constant and never-ending improvement. And some of the best ways to improve is to have someone who can listen and observe your talk through some great eyes of experience and give you big, really consistent feedback that you can use to make yourself better. Sometimes it's just a small thing that you can adjust to take your presentation to a whole other level. And of course, there's much, much more. So JB, why don't you tell them a little bit how it works logistically for our upcoming program?
Oh, I love it, Chris. This is great. We have a 2-day workshop coming up real soon. We have 2 versions of this workshop. The first version that we're rolling out is what we call the 2-day 30, meaning you have a first day, which is April 2nd, which is coming up Saturday. That's the first full day. And you'll notice on that screen that there's 30 days between the first day and the second day. Would you like to know why? Because we're very demanding and we want you to go out and do what we teach you. So what we're going to have you do between the first day and the second day, you got to book a presentation. Okay. And we're going to show you how to do that and give you some ideas on how to do that, because we want you to go out and actually create that success. Yeah. And then you have 2 one-on-one coaching calls in between those 2, first day and the second day, where you have time with each of us, both of us together, to help craft your message, hone your story, create a sales plan, anything else that you need during that coaching presentation. So you get a lot of stuff from that. But we'll be rolling out the other version of the 2-day, which is a 2-day back-to-back. We'll be rolling that out later in the year. So we have 2 versions of the 2-day. This is the first one that's going to be coming up. And we'd love for you to be a part of it. So that you can up-level your business, 10x your business.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think what's so good is in this format is having the time. I can't tell you how many times I've coached people in speaking, JB, and they don't have a presentation. They're working on their keynote talk. They're working on their presentation. And what I always tell them is the best way to create a keynote is to book a keynote. Yep. Number one, because if you have a date in the calendar, you're going to get it done. And that might be a lunch and learn. It might be inviting people to come over to your house. It might be working with the folks at work to give a presentation. And day one, what we're going to do is we're going to focus, on some of those key elements that we talked about today, as well as helping you develop your signature story. Then when you come back and work with us over those 30 days, we're going to be helping you put your full presentation together. And then you're going to have an opportunity to share that with the group so you can really fine tune that. So you're ready to hit the ground running, after that May segment.
Yeah, and that second day is going to be exciting because you get to stand and deliver your presentation and get some professional feedback, not just from Chris and I, but also see how some things land with the other people in the room. So you're going to have some right there on the spot presentation practice.
Exactly. I don't know about you, JB, but sometimes some of the first talks that I ever gave, they happened so fast, I couldn't remember anything after I got off stage. So this time you're going to be able to have someone there to give you that feedback.
Absolutely.
So you're probably wondering, how does this all work? Well, this is how it works from a benefit standpoint. You're first of all going to be able to identify that client avatar, get a crystal clear purpose of your message, learn how to deliver stories in a real powerful manner, create that signature presentation, as we said before. And the way it's going to work is that the program investment works like this. Okay. So it's a one-time payment of $24.97 or 3 monthly payments of $9.97. Now, since you've graced us with your presence here, we want to be able to give you a little advantage, a little offer for spending some time with us today. So what we're going to do is if you take advantage of our early registration special and you simply use the discount code 2022 CSA, so 2022 Champion Speakers Academy, when you enroll, and you can use that Scan Me code that's right there to take you right to the sales page. What'll happen is if you enroll by this Thursday, you'll save 50%. So those amounts move from $24.97, $9.97 to a total of $1248.50 or 3 payments of $498.50. So in that is included 2 full days of training. We put together a great book for you to be able to, a workbook that you can utilize that day of and continue to build from. And then also 2 one-on-one coaching, or I guess 2-on-1, because JB and I will both be doing it, coaching sessions in between those 2 sessions. Oh, so that's the program. So I thought what we could do right now is kind of stop the share in our time together here. Just ask if there's any questions and see if there's anything we can answer for y'all.
I do have one question. Are you guys going to be rolling out any kind of an online format of this anyway?
Yeah, we've thought about that. I guess maybe both of us have have just wanted to be in front of actual human beings since it's been so long. Because we will have a part in this of how to do virtual talks, but right now we're looking to do these live.
However, Laura,
yes,
as we start to roll these out over the next several months, years, we are going to be taking it on the road.
Yeah.
Okay. So bringing it to
Okay.
places like where you are and doing a 2-day back-to-back workshop. That's the larger goal, to be able to go to different cities and do the 2-day workshop as well.
Okay, yeah, I'm just getting my feet wet in the communities here, and I'll start building the communities, and I still plan on being back for conference in June, but yeah, right now I would need an online option.
yeah, understand.
Awesome.
Understand.
Jenny?
Did you say that this is in person or is this on a Zoom call
No, this
No,
is in person.
in
This is
person.
live,
In person.
live and in person.
down in Denver
Yeah,
someplace?
it's in,
It's someplace in Denver. Yeah, we've got it's going to be Arapahoe Road and I-25. So just kind of in the DTC. We do have
Okay.
an office that we're going to do it in.
Okay, and what if you only have a feel for what you want to do? Come on, JB, you know.
do
You
know.
don't quite know where it's gonna go, and it's still in the thought process.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things, Jenny, I'll just tell you is that we do have you do some pre-work. So there's quite a bit of pre-work that we have you to get ready. That'll help you.
2 days?
No. We have pre-work before day one.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a whole questionnaire that you go through to help you go through this process. So when you come on day one, that work is done. And then we of course modify and massage that where we need to, but a lot of those things you'll be able to do beforehand so we can kind of hit the ground running on Saturday.
Got it. Okay, super. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
It's a quiet group. I thought this was a bunch of speakers.
Hey, Chris, you know what that means. That means
Yeah.
we nailed it. That means we knocked it out
Yeah,
of the
right?
park, Chris. That's-
Jamie, were you raising your hand?
She
Yeah,
was.
I was just curious, like, so after the first one, and then you want us to go and do a presentation, are you guys gonna like help us find that place to do that?
So let me
Oh.
clarify something. Number one, we're asking you to book one, not to do one in those 30 days.
Okay,
Okay, so we're asking you to book it. So then at the end of in May, we have you ready to go. And then I'm kind of letting a little bit of the cat out of the bag, but what we're going to do is have everybody bring their dates on the second date. And then hopefully we as a group can go and support you as well.
oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. But so no, we're not asking you to do that one before you're fully ready. You just need to book it. So just book it.
So do you guys have options too, of places, just some
Yeah.
ideas of places
Yeah.
I imagine?
Yeah,
you
we'll
do,
give you-
but-
And I'll just give you what I did. The way I got started speaking was I spoke to a number of service organizations. So
Yeah.
Rotaries, Kiwanis is all over there. I think there's 35 service organizations on Wednesdays in the Denver area that need speakers.
Yep, Lions Club.
Yeah, so that's how I started.
We
and-
did that whole tour, didn't we?
Yeah. So they feed you breakfast or lunch, so at least you get fed. And so we can help you through that process.
Great.
Absolutely.
We'll give you some ideas. Yep, absolutely. Any other
Well, and
questions?
her Igniting Wellness Group is another good place too. I mean, I used to speak
Yep.
at the community and cocktails and
There you
Igniting
go.
Wellness. And
Yep.
she has her Igniting Wellness Group.
Yeah, that's actually one of the suggestions we're gonna give people. Good stuff.
Absolutely.
All right. Anyone else?
Let me do this here. I'll go to gallery. This would be good.
Awesome.
All right. So
Answer,
let me ask you,
are there
was
any,
this helpful? Was this helpful for everyone? Did you at least get one thing that you took away from this that you can utilize? So I'm going to do this. This is the coach in me. I'm just going to go around the horn here, and I'm going to ask everyone to just give us one tip that they got from our time together. So Beth, since you're my first one I see, what's one thing you got out of this that you're going to utilize?
Well, I always prepare. So, but practicing storytelling and gathering information that would tie together with my point.
Right on. Awesome.
Yeah.
Very good.
And always knowing your end desired result from the beginning, so you know how to tailor your message to
Right
get
on.
that desired result.
Awesome. How about you, Laura?
Yeah, mine is mostly in the preparing part because JB can tell you, he's already called me out on the smiling part when I used to do the travel presentations. And I've learned it's best to be yourself, but it's just the practice and tying it all together and doing the close.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, one of the things, and I tell this with people I coach all the time, one of the ways that I've been able to overcome getting out of that real serious mode is focus on the fact that the presentation I'm giving is not about me, it's about serving them. Does that make sense? You know, like if
Absolutely.
you were in front of a
Yeah, mine was just
Sure.
always flat out nerves and not wanting to make a mistake. So I got concentrating so hard that I looked like I
Right.
wasn't even.
right, 'cause you're worried about you making a mistake. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, if you're like, hey, if I'm just here to serve these people, and you know what? I also believe this is that, have you ever been in an audience where you saw someone kind of crashing and burn on stage? And it's very uncomfortable for us as audience members, right? I happen to have a belief. Now, I may not be right, but this is my belief that everyone in that audience wants you to succeed. I think it's very rare that people want you to crash and burn. They're, you know,
Right.
they're not that evil, right? And so just know that as well. They really want you to do well. They really want you to do
It's
well.
one of the things that taught me that it's okay to be me. 'Cause
That's
I've watched
right.
other speakers,
Yeah.
and I'm like, you know what? They're not perfect. It gets it
That's
out.
right.
I don't have to get so upset
Well-
just because I didn't spit it out the way I wanted to.
And you know what? My speaking coach used to make me make mistakes on stage because he felt I was too polished. So he said, at this point, I want you to go, what was that word? You know, he made me practice that because then I was more relatable. Yeah.
Well, it teaches you to pivot on the spot as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. 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 Well, I'll tell I've got some stories to share when we get together about some times I had to pivot. That's for sure. Doc,
Absolutely.
how about you, my friend? What's one thing you could take from here?
I would say making sure that I include the conversion aspect. As a physician, I'm huge on education, and that's also been a very good niche for me for speaking and et cetera. But conversion aspect being woven into it needs to be probably more prominent for me.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Awesome.
Dawn, how about you?
Think more about being mindful about your movements on stage, your hand movements, and walking about, trying to make eye contact with the audience as well. I think I probably more concentrate on what I'm saying rather than how I'm coming across to the audience. Yeah, so it was a good reminder.
Very good.
Excellent.
May I ask, is that an Irish accent?
Close. No, I'm Scottish.
Oh, Scottish. Okay. My youngest son spent a year in Galway going to school.
Nice.
So, and yeah, beautiful area. Beautiful area. All right, Heather, how about you?
I think for me, it was the embedding technique. And even
Mm.
that, I didn't have any books until this year. Now I've been in 2 compilation books and I'm working on my own book. So it is that opportunity to, even extend that to somebody up on stage. I thought that was great.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Awesome.
Julie, let's hear from you.
Hey, I love the idea of rehearsing the audience's reactions. And it's a good reminder for me to give them time. If they want to laugh at something you said, sometimes it's like I get on a roll and I'm powering through it. I'm just going to bulldoze over that. And it's like, no, wait and pause and give them that space.
Oh, that's a great one. Like, let it breathe, right? Just let it breathe a little bit.
Don't just power through it. Yeah.
I've been there. That's a great one.
Well, that's so important that she said that, because a lot of speakers, when they first start, they're afraid of pausing. Okay, for whatever reason, some of them because they're afraid that people think that they forgot what they're supposed to say, or whatever. But there's power in the pause.
So
Okay, and just letting things land. And so I love that you said that, Julie. Good stuff.
That's a great one. That's one I had to learn myself. Kathy, how about you? Kathy Riley.
The unmute button wasn't working. So I love, Chris, what you do with putting your book, because I have a book, on your heart upstage. When you're on stage. So I do give away books and I do things like that, but I don't actually take it up on stage. It's not a visual cue to sit there and to hold it to your heart. So I loved that.
Awesome. Awesome. You need to tell me how it works next time you speak.
Okay, I will do that.
Yeah, they literally doubled book sales for me. when I started doing that. So I'd love to hear your results.
And I'm going to be looking for it, Kathy.
That's right.
Okay.
We're gonna be watching. Okay,
Watch.
Danielle, how about you? What did you take from tonight?
Thank you for including me tonight. The smile, that's huge. I like to smile a lot normally, but I feel like, we don't know what we look like when we're out in the setting or when we're speaking, if we're not videotaping it. For me, I'm like new to public speaking. So trying to just have a regular face that's not frowny, that even when I'm not speaking, but to be intentionally smiling, lifting up my jowls, trying to, even if I have no emotion, trying to still keep it up.
Yeah.
But what I experienced last night at my event, right before I went up to speak, my mind went white, like completely like a whiteboard, like erased everything. Even though I'd gone over my cards and, and I don't know what to do. Luckily I had my card with me, but.
Well, we're going to teach you. We're going to teach you teach everyone on that first day about the power of story. At least this is my technique. I know my story so well that all I have to do is say the first sentence and I'm off. And I have the same thing. I literally will go blank before. And the first time it happened, I freaked out. But then I started my story and it was like putting a disc in. It just took off. So we'll work on that. We're definitely going to work on that when we work the power of story. So,
Well, I mean, that's Chris, you just hit on something, and then I'm going to touch on the smile thing. But there's multiple reasons why we teach you open up with a story. Okay. And you practice that story over and over and over. So if you do hit this, when you do hit the stage and those nerves come in, you know your story.
That's
If
right.
you don't know anything else, you know your story because you've worked on it. It's your story. And so you practice delivering it. And once you get in the flow of that story, by the time you're done, everything else, you're remembering what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's one of the key reasons why we have you start off with a story. But Danielle, I want to share another story about the smile that's so important and knowing when to smile. One of my clients years ago, when she was nervous, she would smile a lot. And there was a part in her presentation where she had to share a really serious story. It was a dramatic story, it was a tragic story. And she smiled throughout the entire story. Imagine, right? And so we had to go back and she didn't realize it.
Right.
So we had to go back and point that out to her.
Yeah.
And how it took away from the power of that story because she smiled at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So knowing when in your presentation to smile
works
is just as
both ways.
important.
Works
Yeah.
both ways. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
And I'll liken that story to, I played football in high school and college, and you get real nervous before games, and until you take your first hit, then you're fine. And so for me, the story's like getting the first hit,
Yeah.
and hopefully you're the one doing the hitting, not getting hit. But that's
Right.
all right, Ginny, how about you?
Oh, man, I think I learned it all. I wrote all my notes. I got 2 pages.
All right.
It's, I'm a beginner, and I think my biggest problem I notice is that one-on-one I'm great with people, but you get 2 people and I clam up. So I see that I need to practice, and I need it all.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. Well, one of the things
that, JB.
one of the things that I learned to do when JB talked about connection that I learned to do is giving a talk and just thinking about speaking to one person at a time. You know what I mean? And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you lock in on one person, because I've seen
Yeah.
speakers do that too. But as you're making that eye contact, you're
Mhm.
just speaking to one person at a time.
And that's we
everyone else
both
will
learned
know
that.
too. Yeah.
Chris,
Yeah.
we both learned that, which sets us apart from most speakers, because that's the thing that I learned too.
Yeah.
Think about it as you're having a conversation with the audience.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
sometimes there's a technique that I use. I'll go to one side of the stage. If I'm making a serious point or I want to make a point, I'll look right at that one person in front of me,
Mhm.
but I'm talking to everyone. Okay. And so
Yeah.
those are different techniques that we go through and we teach people. But yeah, having that conversation
All
and
right.
making sure your presentation is conversational, that you're talking with the audience and not at the audience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you spend the whole day with us because, you know, I need
Yes.
a lot of time.
Yes, we do. Yeah, we spend the whole day with you.
The whole
and then
day with you,
have-
Jenny.
And then you have 2 coaching sessions in between, and then we come back. And then if you need more if you need more after that, then we'll talk
We'll
about my
talk about
one-on-one
that. Yeah,
coaching
exactly.
that we can do for you as well. We got plenty of assistance and help and
Okay,
support for you.
okay, well, JB, you already know that.
I do know. I got you.
All right. That's
Yeah,
good.
okay,
All right. So,
thanks.
Jamie, why don't you share? And you're already going to be joining us on Saturday. So thank you for that. We're really excited to have you join us. But what's one thing you got from tonight?
Well, it's hard to pick one, but the 2 that actually landed for me were the 2 things that I probably need to focus on the most. And one is landing the plane on time, because I tend to be an overgiver and want to keep going. So I will give attention to that. And the really looking at everybody, and doing that. I tend to, when I've spoken before, I feel like I kind of glaze over a little bit. Like I'm always looking out in the audience, but not maybe really connecting more one-on-one. So I want to give that a little more attention to.
That's awesome.
And just
In fact,
being part of the service.
Yeah, I learned the hard way on that. I used to look at the tops of heads, and it was totally
Yeah, I think
unconscious.
that's what I
used to do. And then someone pointed out to me when I was I did a month-long leadership and speaking training, and they're like, "Dude, you're looking at what are you looking at?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm looking at the tops of people's heads." So, I mean, I could tell them where their hair was parted. I could do all that, but couldn't see their eyes. All right. So, guys, thanks so much for sharing that. I'm just going to put this up one more time. I want to just, again, thank you for spending time with us. If you are interested in enrolling, we'd love to have you there. If you have any questions, you want to talk with us directly, I think Anza is on and she's helping us out. She's going to put our email addresses in the chat box, so you can reach out to us if you want to have a conversation, if you have more questions you'd like to do personally to see if this program's right for you. But we'd love to have you join us. We've got about 4 slots left, so we're going to cap it at a certain number. So we'd love to have you join us. And again, you can just go ahead and scan there to get onto the sales page and do it. And then remember to use that code 2022 CSA, and that way you can save 50%. So anyway, and you'll also be getting an email here probably in about an hour with that information, as well as you'll get a copy of this as well, of this video. So you can be able to watch again if you want. So anyway, JB, what do you got to send us off with?
Hey, listen, if you've heard me speak before, you know exactly what I'm going to say, or maybe you don't. Hey, go out and be the badass superhero you were born to be. And thank you for being with us.
Yeah. All right.
Nice
Thanks
to
so much,
see you,
everybody.
Chris.
All right. We look forward to
Hey,
seeing you
guys.
Saturday.
See you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Miss
Thank-
you guys.